JustBallin Podcast. Today, me and Tucker are going to talk about some of the teams in the NBA that have some weird stuff going on right now. Either they had high expectations to maybe win the conference, finish top 3 in the conference, and they're just nowhere close to that right now. And then, unfortunately, for some of these teams, they're entering towards maybe rock bottom of their season, or maybe already there. What's going on, Tucker, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm looking forward to my Knicks in the NBA Finals tonight.
Yeah, of course. Big time. Huge. Raise the banner.
I know. I'm joking about it with my friends that it's like, if the Knicks win, it's like, let's go. We won the NBA Cup. Only 2 other teams have this. If they lose, the Cup is meaningless. Nobody cared about it from the start.
Well, if they lose, your prediction's right. So either way, you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you picked the Spurs, so you're chilling.
Yeah. No, I actually had the Magic in it. So I lost that last.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess you picked the Spurs out of the West. So.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So have that. I'm fascinated to see how these two teams play tonight. Where you guys, I think, will all see and hear this before the Cup finale. But the last year when the Knicks played the Spurs, both of the games were like electric. They played on Christmas Day, and then they played later in the year where Brunson had like 60 and they lost. So I'm excited for this one.
Did you watch the Disney version of the Christmas Day broadcast where
Yes,
it's like Mickey Mouse
year.
dunking on people?
Like Donald Duck is like knocking down threes.
Dude, it was the best. It was like Goofy was guarding Wemby in the post. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's actually, and I like the football one too. It's fun. I don't know. I like those. I hope they keep doing them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll talk about a team that we thought was going to be competing with the Knicks this year at the top of the Eastern Conference. They won 64 games last year, only 18 losses. And right now they're 2/3 of the way there. They have 12 losses. We're going to talk about the 15-12 Cavs, who are 7th in the Eastern Conference. They're about 10th in offensive rating, 10th in defensive rating, 11th overall in net rating. Over the last few weeks, they've been kind of like a league average team. They just recently had maybe their worst loss of the season in overtime to the Charlotte Hornets with no LaMelo Ball. They didn't score a single point in overtime as well. And it just feels like they've been playing kind of like 500 basketball over the last month as well. They've had some injuries. Evan Mobley's out with like the dreaded calf strain right now. Allen's missed some time. Garland's missed some time. Strus hasn't played yet. I guess kind of like what's your temperature check on the Cavs? Is it like panic time, trade time, or is this team just got to get, like, we got to see them fully healthy for at least like a couple weeks?
Yeah, it's a couple of different directions. If you're a Cavs fan and you're thinking there needs to be some kind of dramatic trade, I wouldn't blame you. There are definitely nights where you watch this team and it doesn't work. And it's just such a crazy departure, like you said, from who they were last year. We know that Mobley's out. Garland has had the injury at the beginning of the year and is arguably injury prone, even though most of his injuries are getting like punched in the face and breaking his jaw. And I lean more towards they're going to figure it out, partially because, like you said, the expectation was they would be near the top of the conference. And as we say every time we talk about the East, like it's not the strongest conference. And so if they can just get back a little bit to that form last year, I wouldn't be particularly worried. I do think, however, this is as close as we've gotten, given especially that Hornets loss, to considering what does this team look like without Darius Garland? And honestly, there's only maybe 1 or 2 scenarios in which I'd consider this, but what does this team look like if they trade away Evan Mobley? I think this is as close as we've ever gotten to that being the reality for Cleveland, even though I personally wouldn't go all the way there.
Yeah, I think, in my point of view, I've always said that I want to see Mobley at the 5 full time, and I think Jared Allen probably makes the most sense, like least long-term appealing asset of the 4. I just don't think you could trade Mobley, given his age and how you have him locked up. You're not going to trade Donovan Mitchell anytime soon. Garland becomes an interesting X factor because he definitely has more, I would think he has more trade value than Jared Allen. But yeah, you worry about some of the defensive deficiencies. You worry about the health. I don't even know like what direction they're going to go in. So I'm looking at their schedule now, and it's like 2 straight games against Chicago, Charlotte, and New Orleans before Christmas. Like, they need to walk out of that 4-game stretch, honestly, 4-0, 3-1 at the minimum, because the schedule to finish off December into like mid-January is tough. They get the Knicks on Christmas, and then it's Rockets, Spurs, Suns, Nuggets, Pistons, Pacers, and then back-to-back against Minnesota. It's a pretty gauntlet of a schedule over the next like few weeks. So I want to see this team at full strength. I mean, I think we're definitely seeing them miss Ty Jerome a ton and what he provided them off the bench last year. I knew they were bad, and then I looked at Lonzo Ball shooting splits again today, and they're really bad. Lonzo on the year is shooting 29% from the field. 29% from the field and 26% from 3. It's tough because you're not really getting any like respect on the perimeter. Dean Wade is not knocking down his threes. As much as I like and appreciate what Tyrese Proctor has done off the bench, he's not knocking down the 3 ball whatsoever this year. And I do want to see this team with Max Strus and obviously, like, we haven't really seen a ton of, like, Allen, Mobley, Garland, and Mitchell all play together. I just think the East is too weak at the top still, where it's no, like, we got to get through the Thunder. We got to get through the Boston Celtics in 2024, where it's like a clear favorite. As much as I would like to think that the Knicks are the clear favorite, they're beatable. They're 100% beatable. It just kind of comes back down to this team over the last 3 years being banged up in the playoffs as well. They haven't really had a healthy playoff run. And it sucks, but, like, when are we ever going to see them healthy? Because they have the talent, I think, to make it to the NBA Finals. It's just like, will Garland, Mobley be healthy in a playoff series? And DeAndre Hunter, which we didn't see last year.
Yeah, I think that those would be the two concerns. I'm glad you mentioned Ty Jerome, because the concerning thing about the team this year is it's not all that different, with the exception of Ty Jerome for Lonzo Ball, which you wouldn't think would make that much of a difference between who they are now and who they were last year. And I think if there's a scenario in which the Cavs are really good by the end of the year, it's probably just going to be Mobley's healthy. They had a hard time getting the Garland thing figured out because he missed the first 15 or so games, and then they were really good and they figured it out. But it's concerning that the roster is almost the same. There's some rotation pieces, like Tomlin's playing a lot. Like there's some rotation pieces that are a little bit different. But you would expect, given the coach is the same, given the core four guys are the same, they would still be just as good. But the other thing is, the other concern would be, if you advocate for keeping them together and not making some dramatic move, it's with the thought process that, as you said, they'll be good in the postseason and the East isn't that good. The problem is we have absolutely no sample size of this being a good postseason team. So it's cool and all to say, yeah, let's just run it back. Let's keep everybody together. And the East is weak. But there's no precedent of them being a good postseason team with this core group that makes you confident in that. So that's why I say I think it's as close as we've gotten. And the Mobley thing specifically, it's not trading Mobley just to trade him. But I think if the Bucks were, hey, we want to trade Giannis, we want to have a Mobley, I think the Cavs would listen more now than they ever have before.
For sure. I definitely agree there. I mean, this team, it's just like, I know Lonzo Ball is like technically an expiring contract. He has a $10 million club option for next year, but Lonzo's making $1.3 million more this year than Ty Jerome. Like, you were already going to be in the second apron. There were $22 million over the second apron. Like, I know it allowed you to maybe extend Sam Merrill, but, like, I don't know, kind of a head-scratching move in the offseason to trade away Okoro for Lonzo to let Jerome walk. Like, in hindsight, it's easy to say. I guess in the moment, like, I didn't hate that. But, yeah, this team is missing what Ty Jerome provided them off the bench when Garland missed time last year and how good Jerome was.
Yeah. I'm sure the theory behind the Jerome thing, too, was he just looks so out of place in the playoffs. And the theory would be Lonzo not as good of a scorer, but you can at least play him. There were times where Ty Jerome could not play in the playoffs because he was just getting destroyed. And so that would obviously be kind of the reasoning for that move. But, yeah, it certainly has not worked out for them.
Yeah, because they looked so dominant against Miami, and I really thought there was a chance they could beat Indiana. Like, I'm looking at Ty Jerome's numbers in the playoffs last year. He averaged 16-5 on 52-50, 85 splits in round number one, and then he averaged 8 points, basically halving that in round two, and shot 30% from the field, 25 from three.
Yeah, I think it was the Pacers series where he wasn't playing a ton, and then he went crazy at the end of one of the games. He scored like 16 points straight or something. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but I remember him being very marginalized in the Pacers series, and then he had one game where he came in at the end and like brought them back from down double digits, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Yeah,
but regardless,
yeah. So it's tough to see what direction they're going to go in just because they're in the second apron. So it's like if you want to make a move, you can't send out more money. You can only be a 1-for-1. You can't aggregate contracts. I just want, and this team doesn't own direct capital of their first round picks for the next couple of years. They've sent out all their swaps in the Mitchell trade and the Hunter trade. They can trade a first in 2030 too, I think, but I wonder what direction they'll go in.
The second apron stuff is important because even though it's relatively boring, it is actually really important for their season because, like you said, they can't take on any money. And in a scenario in which they were like, yeah, we'll do have a Mobley for Giannis, they have to do something else first. They have to trade like Max Strus and someone else's number in different deals to like the Nets that have cap space to then go under the apron because they have to trade someone along with Mobley to match Giannis' salary. So that obviously seems very unrealistic to change your roster that much. And then if you want to go out and get someone in exchange for Darius Garland, because that's really the issue here, right? Is the lack of synergy in the front court and the back court. Individually, all four of them are very good players, but Mitchell, who, by the way, we should have mentioned this before, is playing out of his mind. I think he's averaging like 31 points a game. I know he had the comment, I believe it was last night or after the Hornets game, maybe, of he had a bad night and he's not allowed to. And he's right. Like, that's part of the problem. But he's been unbelievable. He's a lock it in 100% All-NBA guy this year, depending on what team you want to put him on. And the lack of synergy between him and Garland in the backcourt and Allen and Mobley in the frontcourt is really the core of the issue, because Mitchell, the way he's been this year, is good enough to be we're just going to give him the ball and create all the time, and you want Mobley at the 5. So you get to the end of these games, and you've got 2 of your 5 guys figured out, and you really don't know who the other 3 are going to be. A lot of times, Allen's not finishing the game. Sometimes, depending on the backcourt matchup, you don't really want Garland out there because you don't want him to get killed on defense, and there's not really that much of a market for someone like Jared Allen around the league, especially given the restrictions that the Cavs have, where they can't take on any money, they can't send out multiple guys. You have to find a $20 million guy that someone wants Jared Allen to send back in return. And Garland's the same thing. You don't want to trade him at his lowest value ever when he's not playing well and he's got these injury things. And if you were to do it, you would need to also trade Allen, because you need this like wing, someone maybe that can play at the 4 alongside Mobley, because you want to maybe get rid of Jared Allen as well. And there's just too many moving parts for it to actually happen in the middle of the year. Even as much as I would like, maybe my Nets to call and say, hey, we'll take Darius Garland off your hands. Michael Porter Jr. is averaging like 29 a game. Are you interested in him at the 4 alongside Evan Mobley? As interested as I personally would be in that, it gets very difficult very quickly for the Cavs because of all the APR rules.
Yeah, there's 2 players that I think, like, I think to maximize this team, Donovan Mitchell, unless you're going to get like this really good defensive but also good floor spacing initiating point guard, which are very hard to find in the league, at a high level, I think the best case or moving forward, Mobley to the 5, Donovan Mitchell to the 1, and then you just have like these switchable wings, in which they do have one in DeAndre Hunter, and I think Jalen Tyson is getting there around those 2, because I think we're going to just see the same issues with the lack of floor spacing in the front court, and Mobley not really the paint is clogged up for him with Allen out there because he's not a respected shooter, and then 2 small guys in the backcourt. There's 2 interesting players, I think. Like, I want to throw these like ideas at you. I wonder, I think we're far off from like even these making sense. One of them is, it's just in division, and I don't think the Pacers do it, but like, who says no Jared Allen for Andrew Nembhard?
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers wouldn't do it because he's too important to what they do alongside Halliburton, but I would say...
Like, I would like Nembhard next to Donovan Mitchell.
I would too. Yeah, I mean, I think Indiana says no. I think Jared Allen is good, and we all know that he's good, but he's very specifically good and can generally be kind of redundant, especially at the salary that he's at. So I would not be surprised if the league kind of views him the way that the league viewed him when he got to Cleveland, which was as a throw-in the James Harden trade. Like, it's someone that everybody knows is good, but is never really in a hurry to trade for.
Okay. And then my other one was, I guess it would probably be Garland, not Allen here because financials, but Garland for Derek White, who says no. There's an age gap, but Derek White's a better player, so it's tough. And Boston obviously has its 2 ball-dominant guys when healthy in Tatum and Brown. I think Derek White next.
I think Boston says no.
I do
but
too.
It's crazy how many times we have these trade conversations, and the more you think about it, the more you realize how much Derek White would actually go for. I think we talked about this like a handful of weeks ago, where if there was a Derek White trade and the Celtics were to sell, like, he would be on that kind of like Mikal Bridges. Wow, they actually got all these firsts, that Desmond Bane level of all these firsts for Derek White. So yeah, I think Boston says no, but I really like Darius Garland. I think he's really good, and I would not be surprised if he's not on the team to start next year, if there's just they need to make some kind of change. And thank goodness, by the way, for the Cavs' sake, that this is not a Donovan Mitchell contract year. Thank goodness they've already got that figured out, and I think he still has at least 2 more years left on his deal. But could you imagine if they were this bad and they were this frustrating, and a situation they've been in before where he's an impending free agent or a year away from being a free agent as well? Because I've had that thought too. I've had the thought of, obviously, we know Donovan Mitchell wanted to go to the Knicks, and then that didn't happen because of the Brunson thing. But I've had the thought of, why would Donovan Mitchell not go to the Cavs and be like, hey, you know how there's always a next superstar to ask out? Yeah, I'm going to be one of those guys. This is not working. I didn't particularly want to be in Cleveland in the first place, but it's where I ended up. I've considered leaving before, and I'd like to be moved. What's stopping him from going in and doing that?
Yeah, I feel like the way he handled Utah was pretty professional, right? Like, he didn't really, I think, want out fully until like they traded Gobert, and it's like, okay, we're not going to be competitive. I'm open to a trade.
Danny Ainge wanted to do the 2K rebuild and just get all the picks.
Yeah, all the picks. I mean, it's kind of worked out, kind of not. But yeah, the only other guy I thought like would be a good fit next to Mitchell in the backcourt is Drew Holiday, but it's tough financially, and like, you're not moving Garland or Allen for Holiday based off age, I think, at this point.
I think, yeah, pre-aprons, this would be way easier to figure out a deal. But the fact that they can't make any move that involves sending out multiple players or taking on more money than they currently have, and they can't sign buyout guys, is crazy. But correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure the reason they're in the aprons is obviously because of the 4 big contracts, but when they traded for DeAndre Hunter, didn't they like duck the apron in that year, but then they kind of committed to going over it because the Sam Merrill thing? Like they actively chose in the offseason.
Yeah, they were like, we're going to be in the
Okay.
second apron again.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's because Dan Gilbert, the owner, was like, we won 64 games last year. Like, I'm okay investing into the apron and paying the taxes. I think that shouldn't change. Like, I still want to see this team at full strength in the playoffs, but I think like ownership probably can say that. And then if they have another round 1 or round 2 exit with this tax bill, if they win 48 games or if that, like, they somehow get to 50 wins or something like that, we could have a question, I think, in the offseason that they're actually going to trade. I thought they were going to trade one of the two of Allen and Garland last offseason, but it never happened.
I think if they'd gotten a good Jared Allen offer, they probably would have.
Yeah.
And they're just like, they're not going to actively make our team worse just to get rid of someone. And the end result is he just kind of gets marginalized at the end of these games. And we know what the best version of Cleveland is. And unfortunately, it might not involve 2 of their best 4 players.
Yeah, and I think once Halliburton and Tatum went down too, it's like, okay, there's a clear path for us to win again this year. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Cool.
For, I guess, the next team, we should talk about the Golden State Warriors, who I feel like are in a very similar position to where we were a year ago, where it's like, we need to get Steph help. We need to be aggressive before Steph ends up retiring. This team is about 14th in the NBA in terms of net rating. They're 6th in defensive rating. They're 20th in offensive rating. They're 13-14, which is actually good enough for 8th in the Western Conference because it's kind of a top-heavy conference at the moment. They just had a brutal loss to the Blazers where Steph had 48 or more than that, and they ended up losing this game. Jimmy Butler has not been the co-star, at least in the regular season, that they have needed, I would say. Jonathan Kuminga is getting DNPs for somebody making 14.5% of their cap space at $22.5 million. The Al Horford experiment has been rocky. Brandon Podziemski has not taken a leap. It's been a rough season so far for the Warriors. It's like a catch-22 because I do want them to be aggressive around Steph, but how aggressive can you be when there's still such a large gap between you and OKC? Like, even if you plopped Giannis on this team without even, like, giving up anything, I still can't confidently say that you're going to beat OKC in a series, which is crazy because this team has its flaws. Obviously, that would be a great series, but it's tough. That's not happening. You're not getting Giannis for free in the middle of the season. So what have you kind of seen about Golden State? Do you think this team will figure itself out, or do you think we're heading to a point where it's like last year 2.0 this year?
I'm torn because coming into the year, I didn't expect them to be a 50 to 55 regular season wins team. That just wasn't how they were built. I would have to guess they're one of the oldest teams in the league. Certainly by minutes played, I'm sure they're one of the oldest teams in the league. And the expectation always was, can they find a way to be a top 6 team, not have to play the extra play-in game or games, and make it a 16-win season? That was the whole goal for the year, was get to the playoffs, and all you got to do is win 16 games. Because they have a bunch of 16 game guys like Draymond, Jimmy Butler, Steph. These guys have been really good in the postseason when they've managed to stay healthy. The issue was always going to be in the regular season. So I'm not surprised that they're struggling, but I'm surprised in the ways that they are struggling. Where if you look at the counting stats for someone like Jimmy Butler, it actually looks pretty good, but his impact night to night, he's got a little bit of Tobias Harris going on where you kind of forget that he's on the floor. He's just a little mopey. He's a little bit slow. Even Steve Kerr has said publicly their offense just does not flow as well when he's out there because he's just not as aggressive. But, I mean, I think he's averaging his like 25 and 5, getting to the line a little bit. His shooting splits aren't bad, but the impact just isn't there. And then, like we say every year, the real disappointment is Kuminga, whether it be because they won't play him or because he's just not good enough or a combination of the two. And I thought that there was reason for optimism for them being a good regular season team if Podziemski could be better, if Kuminga could be better, and those 3 guys playing together. But like you said, they can have a great Steph game and still lose to teams that they should not be losing to. And so I think if we're going to commit last year to the Jimmy Butler thing, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't commit to something relatively dramatic in the middle of this season either, because like you said, it feels very, very similar, which is crazy for a team that when they added Jimmy last year was really, really good. Now, that was every game was a playoff game, basically, after they added Jimmy, so that's probably why. But there were plenty of advanced numbers you could look at that said that they were one of the 6-7 best teams in the league when they added Jimmy towards the end of the year last year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the roster, and like the reason why I think I like Golden State more than the Lakers going into the year was the depth of this team. And I like Golden State more than I think people did last year because of their depth, which I guess provided them an advantage at the deadline to trade 3 for 1 to get Jimmy and stuff like that. I mean, I'm looking at this team and I'm like, I don't hate the roster, it's just like I'm looking at the third leading scorer right now, which is technically Jonathan Kuminga, and you're getting like not equal value of somebody that should be your third leading scorer whatsoever that's making $22.5 million. And I don't know, when the Kuminga like stalemate happened and it's like, okay, it's a 1-year deal, but we're probably going to trade him. And I'm like, if you're going to trade him and you think you're going to get a good return, isn't he going to be playing well for you? So why would you want to trade him if you don't have a young core and he's playing well? But then if he's not going to net a good, like he's not playing well, like who's going to want to trade for Kuminga and extend him at the end of the year? Now there's distraught assets in the league where you can get there, like maybe like Zach LaVine's not going to cost much. DeMar DeRozan wouldn't cost much. Like at least something that's at least a better offensive player than Kuminga. And that's going to be the piece. Like once, what is it? January 15th, he can get traded. He's going to get traded. And I think you're not going to get like a sexy return on paper, but like, I like Will Richard. I like Quidden Post this year a ton. I like Pat Spencer. Like these are solid 8, 9, 10 guys in your rotation. It's just you need Jimmy to play better. I don't know if that's a cruise throughout the regular season and let's get to April and then Jimmy will start to care a little bit more. But I think he needs to be better as a number 2. And I wonder what direction this team goes in. Because like I'm watching Draymond offensively. He's taking a little bit of a dip. Age is catching up to him, which makes sense. He's in his age 35 season. Like he's not going to age as well as some of these other guys throughout around the league. So I wonder, would they actually think about attaching Draymond's salary? Like, because then if you're attaching Draymond and Kuminga, we can have a Kawhi Leonard talk. We can have an Anthony Davis talk. We can have a Zion Williamson talk. We can have a different talk out there. I wonder if they would actually be willing to part ways with Draymond, which they should, but he's done a lot for the franchise, so I don't know.
That's kind of what I was referencing when I was like, well, if we're going to do something dramatic last year, then why wouldn't we do it this year? Because the Kuminga thing feels like a given, like you said. It would be very surprising if he's on the roster by the trade deadline. So the thing you could do that's more dramatic than that would be trade Draymond, because those two salaries together get you to like the mid 40s, the high 40s in terms of overall salary, which, like you said, opens up a lot of possibilities. But it's already been reported that if they were going to trade Draymond, which they've shown a willingness to move on from that core because they let Clay walk, they would literally have to go to Steve Kerr and go to Steph and go to the entire organization and be like, we're going to do this. Are you cool with it? And all of those people would have to say yes, which to me, their season would have to go even worse than it is right now. It feels not great, but they'd have to be like multiple games under 500 and still want to commit to making the team good this year, which I don't know if that's actually going to happen. The Draymond thing, from a basketball perspective, I think we can all agree there are ways in which they could trade Kuminga and Draymond and make the team better. I don't know necessarily if there's realistic options for them in terms of like Giannis or whatever, but in terms of shaking up the roster, doing something in the front court, those two salaries together could improve their team. I find it hard to believe they would actually do it. So what's probably going to happen is we're going to get to between January and February, they're going to trade Kuminga for like Vucevic, and that's going to be their big, and they're going to win 44 games. They're going to win a play-in game and get smoked by Denver or Houston in the first round. And then we're going to have 1 year left on Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond's contracts. And then we're going to have the last dance next year with those three guys. And then the 27-28 Warriors are going to not have any of them on the roster. That's what I'm anticipating.
Yeah, it feels like that's probably the realistic scenario that, ends up happening. Man, Vucevic being a return win. If you were willing to part ways with Kuminga, Podziemski, I forget what the number was, 2 or 3 first. I think it was like 2 for Lowry Markkanen when he was making $18 million a couple off seasons ago in 24. Like that was your ticket right there, pre-Jimmy, where you're getting like this great like forward scoring option next to Steph Curry that's more aggressive than Jimmy, that's younger than Jimmy, that I think you're okay paying $50 million now. Obviously, Markkanen's value has kind of gone up and down since. So I do wonder what direction they're going to go in. Like, is it going to be a Vucevic type splash where it's like that?
Like, I felt like I was going crazy in the offseason when there were rumors about Malik Monk and some protected Kings future first for Kuminga. I felt like I was going crazy. It's like, why are we not doing this? That sounds awesome. We get a guard alongside Steph that can score 30 on any night. He's gotten better as a facilitator. He can space the floor for you. If Moses Moody does his thing where 1 month he shoots 25% from 3, you don't have to play him anymore. You got Malik Monk who can space. And it's a Kings pick. Even if it's top 15 protected 2031 Kings pick, that sounds awesome. I'd love to have that because I could trade that for some big right now. I never understood why that didn't happen. You mentioned the Markkanen thing a few years ago. Obviously, more recently, they had an opportunity to get Markkanen, didn't do it, and then used a bunch of those pieces to add Jimmy. I feel like they have shown a willingness to do a bunch of stuff to try and surround Steph with some kind of puncher's chance of winning a couple of playoff rounds. And I think we're at the point where just trading Kuminga doesn't give them that anymore. The one name that did really, really interest me that you mentioned, the concept of Anthony Davis on this team is really, really cool. And I think that's what they need. I think, like you mentioned Kawhi, you mentioned some other guys. No disrespect to Quentin Post. They need an actual big. Like, if Quentin Post sprains his ankle and Al Horford is old one night, Draymond has to play the 5, and it's not going to go well. As much as he's already slipped, him having to play 20-plus minutes at the 5 is just not going to go well. I've also floated the concept of going back to the Kuminga thing, something I'd really like to see happen. The Clippers, who we're going to talk about later, are a catastrophe. I'd love Zubats on this team. One, gives them an actual physical big, and two, historically, has been a pretty good Jokic defender, someone that if they do get to the postseason, they're probably going to have to deal with. So I don't know if you agree, but I feel like in a Kuminga situation, in a Kuminga and Draymond situation, it has to be a big. I've floated Sabonis trades, like a bunch of stuff. I feel like it has to be a big.
You know what? I don't hate that because I tweeted out today where I'm like, I'm ready for the Clippers to trade everybody. Like, who cares if you give up pick 1 at this point? It doesn't matter. You traded that pick 6 years ago.
You're not getting it back.
Yeah, you're never getting it back. So, like, Kuminga and then maybe pods, like something like that, maybe a first or two, and then you can get like Derrick Jones Jr. and Ivica Zubac. Like, that's really good.
Zoo was like borderline third-team All-NBA big last year. He's very good.
No, I don't hate that, and I could see the reasoning for the Clippers. It's a little bit more team than I was gonna propose the question: who says no in a Jimmy for Kawhi trade? Straight up. I think Kawhi's better, but then you also have the risk of, is Kawhi going to play?
I'd have to look. If their contracts run out at the same time, I think it's a literal tie. But if Kawhi's contract runs for another year, I would say
they're both. Kawhi's about $4 million less this year, $6 million less next year. Both have 2 years left, so Jimmy makes a little bit more.
I think
Jimmy's 2 years older.
I mean, the Clippers probably don't. They just go to voicemail and let them just auto trade. They don't care. Like, that doesn't. They're gonna suck.
Yeah, because I'm like, are the Clippers just done with Kawhi? Like, they don't care at this point. We'd rather just get Jimmy in here. It's at least a different guy that maybe wants to be here in a way.
Yeah, and there's no tiebreaker either with like just weird off the court stuff because no one ever knows what's happening with Kawhi. Jimmy's always been a little bit weird. That's like the most. Tie, I have no idea who says no.
It was just an idea that I was like, it was an intrusive thought.
I will say, I don't think they have enough assets to do it. But in theory, Giannis and Jimmy Butler make the exact same amount of money.
Yeah, it's just like Milwaukee. It's like, why do we want Jimmy?
Unless you'd have to send Jimmy somewhere else. But salary-wise, like, it gets difficult if you want to try and do a Giannis thing. It has to be Draymond and Kuminga and Pods and Moody. And it's like we're trading 6 guys all of a sudden for Giannis. But Jimmy and Giannis do make the same amount of money.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like
find
what
a third team
would get involved in that as a third team.
Probably nobody. Because, like, I think the Warriors have 3 outright firsts they can trade, and then they can do swaps, they can do Kuminga, but realistically, unless a bunch of teams just don't want to trade for Giannis, which there's been reporting that the Thunder, of course, and the Spurs and Rockets are not particularly interested. Yeah. Unless Giannis says that he's out and it comes down to like the Warriors offer and the Knicks offer, I guess that gets close. But I think more likely, not to go on a Giannis tangent, but more likely that's like an offseason thing. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. The only thing we know is Jonathan Kuminga will not be on the roster after the All-Star break, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Would you want your Nets to get involved at all?
For Kuminga or just in general?
Kuminga. Like, I guess it would be Michael Porter Jr., and then it's like Kuminga, Hield, however you get there financially. I don't think Draymond has to be in there for Porter Jr.
Yeah, I mean, I would take Kuminga with like the extra year because I think Michael Porter Jr. isn't expiring. I can't remember because people always talk about his contract like it's terrible, but he's averaging 20.
Yeah, I know.
I would keep doing the like you trade in a safety pin for a piece of paper for a eraser all the way up to a car. That's what we're doing with Cam Johnson. We're trading it for Michael Porter Jr. and then maybe Kuminga, but. I would do that. I don't know if the Warriors have any interest in Michael Porter Jr. because they're probably worried about injury stuff. They need someone that's actually going to play, but they're not playing Kuminga anyway. I would do that for sure.
Interesting. All right, so we'll stay in the Pacific Division. We'll talk about the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings are probably at rock bottom or close to it as well. Luckily for them, though, they do own their first round pick, unlike the Pelicans and the Clippers, who are around them in the Western Conference. They are 6-20 right now. They are 29th. Second to last in the NBA in terms of net rating, 27th in defensive rating, dead last, 30th in offensive rating with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook, Domantas Sabonis, who is hurt, and some other guys on their team that this should not be the worst offense in the NBA. This is, I don't know if this comes back on Doug Christie. I don't know if it comes back on the locker room. Guys not really caring too much, not really having motivation. But when Russell Westbrook is your most impactful player in the year 2025, there's an issue here. There's an issue with this team. It could date back to the Halliburton trade, it could date back to how they handled the 2023 offseason after the Light the Beam year, or the 23 offseason. And it could also come back on just last year's fiasco with De'Aaron Fox, trading him for 30 cents on the dollar. It's Zach LaVine, who's maybe a negative asset at this point or just a neutral asset. Nick Clifford and Maxime Renaud, fine players, but by the time you're going to be good again, these guys are going to be like in their mid to late 20s. And you got a 2031 Wolves pick. You couldn't even get your first round pick back in a swap. This team needs to, I hate to just say blow it up because you don't want to tear it down. This team went through like its rebuild phase for a while in the 2010s and the late 2000s. Like, it's easier said than done, but whatever's here is not working. And I wonder what's going to be. I think they want to sell at the deadline. It's just like, will anybody take what they're selling at this point?
Yeah, it's funny to look back at the De'Aaron Fox trade because nobody liked the deal at the time, but it was like, oh, maybe Zach LaVine could be something. We're getting the Bulls back together for whatever reason with him and DeMar. I honestly think that the owner for the Kings liked Zach LaVine. They tried to sign him to an offer sheet all those years ago, and he just still wanted Zach LaVine on the team. I don't think there was any other front office that would have tried to get Zach LaVine as the centerpiece of a De'Aaron Fox trade, and it was just the owner wanted to do that. I think that's honestly, like, we're going to talk about roster moves, we're going to talk about all this different stuff. I know what it's like to have one of your sports teams have a terrible owner and it holds your team back. I'm sure you do too.
I do too.
It is a terrible feeling because they did things right. It felt like the owner stepped back and they started to do things right. The Light the Beam thing was great. Mike Brown was a good coach. They had an actual style that everybody was excited about. They could have won a postseason series. They had some injury stuff come up. And then it felt like we started to meddle a little bit more. They didn't handle things well, which is the reason De'Aaron Fox wanted to leave. Like, he asked out basically a year in advance by not signing an extension because he didn't like the direction of the team. Maybe the relationship with the coach was weird and they fired Mike Brown. That to me it's not something you could fix or even really discuss in the show today, but the ownership situation just continues to hold this team back. And my football team did this for years where it's like we went through 4 coaches in 4 years and the owner is like the richest dude in the league, but for some reason we can't build a practice facility. We can't do this, that, and the other thing. And it feels like that's where they're at is they're not going to force him to sell the team, but the Kings would be better off if they did.
Oh, 100%. And it stinks for Kings fans who are going to watch Mike Brown coach in the NBA Cup. It's the NBA Cup, but he's in that game. It's De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes playing in this game as well. It's tough, man, because this team whiffed on so many draft picks, and then they hit on Fox in 2017 and Halliburton in 2020. They have the Light the Beam team and thought they were better than they probably were with the injury luck they had. And Harrison Barnes is maybe a better player this year than DeMar DeRozan is. And they gave up an unprotected first-round pick or swap down the line to make that happen.
They are the number one. If you're trying to make a trade and get good value, you're calling the Kings first, and you're probably calling them again afterwards before you get to any other team. Like, that is the team. I used to joke when the Spurs were like really, really good with Pop, and they would always get like Gary Neal or whatever, like all these really good players. They would go sign elsewhere and be bad. I would always joke, like, never sign anyone from the Spurs. Yeah. Same thing with the Brad Stevens Celtics. It's like, if you sign Jay Crowder, he's going to be worse for you than he was in Boston. It's the complete opposite in Sacramento. Trade for guys. That's why I didn't understand the Malik Monk thing. Like, trade for guys from Sacramento because they are going to be better on your team, and you're going to get a good trade 99 times out of 100.
Yeah. Like Keon Ellis, I feel like he'll be like that too. Kind of like the Miami Heat. It's like Gabe Vincent in the 23 playoffs to the Heat and watch him now on the Lakers. It's like a different player.
Yeah, Keon Ellis in like the 2029 finals is going to hit a clutch corner 3 for the Spurs, and Kings fans are going to be like, why? We had him. We were DNPing him when we're playing 37-year-old Russ. Like,
this is the ownership that doesn't deserve this, but for their fan base, I do hope this is like a Darren Peterson, AJ DeBanza team. Like, they win the lottery. Like, I would be happy for Kings fans. I think Keegan Murray's like a good asset to have. The contract's going to get a little hefty, but I think it's worth it given their young core is non-existent at this point. It's just like, I don't know. I would try to trade everybody, which everybody not named Keegan Murray I would make available. Like, obviously you want to keep Nick Clifford, see what you have in him, and you're going to keep Maxime Renaud, but can you get a valuable second for Russ? Can you get anything for DeRozan, LaVine, Monk, Sabonis? I mean, you traded Valanciunas for Sarge to save money, even though you're having a clear downgrade. So that's already showing what you wanted to be this year. It's pretty frustrating. Devin Carter hasn't really worked out a ton, being their first-round pick in the 24 draft. like with Jared McCain going after Devin Carter and Carter's shooting.
We'll always have that crazy first half summer league game with Devin Carter this year. We had like 20 in the first half. We'll always have that.
Yeah, and I think he could be another player that's like good. Like I loved watching Devin Carter at Providence because I was like, if he goes to a good team, he could be like the 9th man on a playoff rotation, kind of like Will Richard this year in a way for the Warriors, where it's like
no one's quicker to give up on their highly drafted rookies than the Kings. No, they lead the history of the league in trading their first round rookies 18 months into their careers.
It's crazy.
Like Nick Stauskas, Thomas Robinson. I'm sure Nick Clifford's going to be on a new team. Like seems like every other year.
It's like we drafted Devin Carter 13th overall, and like you're never going to give him consistent playing time. He's never going to get better. I hope he does get consistent playing time in the second half because, man, it's just like it's going to be a very brutal second half, and you're just now as a Kings fan hoping this team loses, which they hope they were done with that, and now we're just back to where we were in like 2017.
And it's hard too because, like you said, ideally you'd be trading a bunch of guys away, but ironically, because some of the same people are there, it's a little bit like where the Bulls have been the last couple of years, where there's just reasons that teams won't want all of their guys. Like Sabonis is good, but is a liability defensively and is definitely a system fit. Like if you're not playing towards what he does, his value goes way, way below what you would want to potentially trade for him or get for him, I should say. Zach LaVine, same thing. Like we all know Zach LaVine can score. We also know that he doesn't really care to guard and he's going to be really expensive. We're talking about $40+ million and the tier of those guys. Like you don't want to add in this era someone that's not actually going to provide that level of value. DeRozan is fine, but this is like year 5 or 6 of just, hey, it's really cool that DeMar DeRozan gets clutch baskets. Doesn't really help you a lot during the actual flow of the game and wants the ball and wants to take inefficient shots. There's just there should be a way to get a pile of assets to rebuild for this team, but for all these different reasons, for all these different players, I wouldn't be surprised if they're all on the roster after the deadline because it's like I said, it's like the Bulls thing where people have been asking for them to trade Vooch for forever, and they just don't do it because they're like, I don't want to trade Vooch for a second-round pick. That's embarrassing. Well, okay, well, he's just still playing, and you don't have that second-round pick now. I think that's probably where the Kings are going to end up too.
Yeah, it's just like if the Warriors can't do anything for Kuminga, it's just like you're trying to make a last-ditch effort to get Kuminga or something to like latch onto going forward. So
Perfect Sacramento King, Jonathan Kuminga. He's going to average like he's going to in March and April. He's going to average like 27 and 5 on 40% 3-point shooting, and they're going to win 2 of 15 games. Perfect King.
I know. So I mean, I don't hate the chance for Kuminga to play in Sacramento because there'll be touches and chance for him to grow, but. Yeah, I don't want also Sacramento to give $100 million to Jonathan Kuminga in the offseason and just like, what are we doing at this point? So we just kind of like, you alluded to them a little bit, the Chicago Bulls, another team that got up to a 5-0 start this year, where we were saying, could the Bulls be competent this year in a way? Nope, they've had some of the worst losses over the last few weeks. They're currently 23rd in net rating, 25th in defensive rating, 23rd in offensive rating. Since their 5-0 start, they're 10 and 15, so they're 5 in their last 5 and 15 in their last 20, with losses to the Pelicans, the Hornets, the Pacers twice, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Pelicans twice, actually. They beat the Wizards by 1, and this is with the team kind of at full strength again in a way, with Kobe White back and Josh Giddey is healthy. Like, Deshaun dealing with a thumb injury. Noah Essengay, their water pick, is out for the year. It's just same old Bulls. I was going to tweet out early in the year, but I didn't want to like rain on the parade that the Bulls may regret going 5-0 at the start of the year, at the end of the year, when they watched the team ahead of them in the lottery move up, like last year with the Mavericks. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to rain on the parade for the Bulls who finally had a good start. It's just like same thing with them. They're going to be mid every year. Reinsdorf's going to get his playing tournament game revenue, and we're going to just be picking 12th in the draft.
It's crazy too because as a fan of a tanking team, I'll do an occasional, tankathon sim every other day or so. And it's crazy how bad you have to tank this year.
Yeah.
Because the class is so good. It's like the Wemby year where everybody's trying to lose. But even a team like Chicago that, like you said, got off to a good start, it's been terrible since. I'd have to pull it up. They're probably picking like 9th or 10th right now. It's crazy how bad you have to be to give yourself a really, really high chance in the lottery. It's also, I know Bulls fans have complained for years about where they end up in the draft. They pick 7th or 8th, and then they get Kobe White, or they actually get 4th, and then they get Patrick Williams in what was a 3-player draft at the time of the draft. Not an excuse this year because they picked the kid from France 1 pick ahead of Derek Queen, which means they could have either taken Derek Queen, which would have been super fun, or they could have been the team that got that Pelicans pick that looks pretty sweet right now. We presume.
Yeah.
We don't. Joe Dumars might have called literally one team. We don't know, but you still could have been that team, or like you said, you could have just taken Derek Queen. Now, obviously, that's all hindsight, but to get 10 10 games, playing a couple of minutes out of the kid you picked 12th overall, just makes things that much worse. Not to mention, it's not like they're not invested in the team. They paid Josh Giddey a bunch of money. They've held on to Vooch for a couple of years. Kobe White is an impending free agent, I believe. They have invested to try and at least be something. The Patrick Williams contract remains completely mystifying. No one knows why they did that. So it's just this weird in between of like you said, maybe that's the common thing, is just the owner wants to be semi-competitive, and that's just the common thing between them and the Kings. But I did consider them for, like, them and the Kings at times feel like natural trade partners where, if they wanted to try and make the play-in again this year, like they could go and trade for Sabonis. They're not going to get Levine or DeRozan back, but maybe that could be an option. But it's just, there are not that many teams in the league that I genuinely feel bad for. I feel bad for Bulls fans because, like, they had the Derrick Rose era that got cut short, and then ever since then they have been 7th, 8th pick. Sometimes you get a little bit excited about, like, Matas Buzelis, but not a whole lot after that. It's been okay this year, maybe not the leap people wanted, but there's never really been, except for the first 6 games of the year this year, there's never really been, oh my gosh, we could actually do something, with the exception of, like, the first 45 games of the Lonzo team. And then that's it.
Yeah, no, it was a head-scratching move to trade away your first-round pick for Vucevic that ends up being Franz Wagner. It was a head-scratching move to just keep this team as it is, and trading Zach LaVine a year too late, maybe Caruso a year too late, although I don't hate the Giddey addition for them. It's been going quite well, I would say. They're going to have a ton of money off the books this year. I mean, counting right now, it's around 40, it's going to be around like 70, almost $80 million off the books in expiring contracts with Vooch, Zach Collins, Herter, Kobe White, Adesumu, and Javon Carter. Like I said, it's easier said than done to, like, kind of retool and rebuild a little bit, like trading away who people are coming to see. And the United Center has some of the best attendance in the NBA for one of the more mid teams. Like, Bulls fans want to see a winning product, or they just want to support their team in a way. But I would trade Kobe White. I would trade Adesumu. I would maybe be intrigued about, like, I would see how desperate the Warriors are. Could you trade away Patrick Williams for Jonathan Kuminga? I don't know. Get off that contract. The Patrick Williams contract was also a head-scratching move. It made no sense. I don't know who they were bidding against to give him 4 for or 5 for 80 or whatever it was. And yeah, I'm intrigued about Giddey long term. I'm intrigued about Buzelis. I still have to be intrigued about Essengay, although it's not been the rookie season you would have liked, especially with Derek Queen, like you mentioned, going a pick later. Yeah, I just don't know what direction this team is going to head in. I don't. I'd be petrified if this team traded for Anthony Davis or something like that.
I'm glad you mentioned the Vooch trade because I forgot it was 2 first. It was the pick that ended up becoming Jett Howard, and then it was Franz. And
Wendell Carter Jr., who's, like, been...
I was just going to say, ironically, I think I said this like a year or two ago. When healthy, within like 2 years of the trade, Wendell Carter Jr. was probably just, like, straight up better than Vooch as, like, an all-around player and a better fit for what the Bulls roster ended up becoming. And they traded him plus 2 first, which at the time, like, it made a little bit of sense because they were ascending with that Lonzo team. But yeah, I think in terms of actual options for them, it's not going to make the fan base excited, but you want to try and get value. I think, again, it's another interesting Kuminga team, and you're holding on to the cap space that you have. You're holding on to what Giddey may or may not be. I'm sure we're going to get, 25, 10, and 9 out of Josh Giddey in March. That's going to be great. That's like I've made a video about this years ago. I called it the Josh Jackson effect, where his splits in October compared to March are like night and day. Like, Josh Jackson in March and April would average like 17 a game on pretty efficient shooting. And then in November, he would do absolutely nothing because, especially in the beginning of his career, it's like, well, we've got this guy that was a top 5 pick. Like, we should see what we have in him. Maybe we'll be able to rebuild him. And it would never work out. So I'm sure we'll get that out of Josh Giddey. You hold on to him, and you hope for lottery luck, and you hope for you able to use the cap space. The nice thing is, although it's not particularly useful in free agency, cap space is very useful now in the offseason to be able to get something back because teams are going to be trying to duck aprons. Teams are going to be trying to make space, and I don't know that they're going to be particularly enticing as a free agency destination, like Trae Young or someone out there. But that at least you'd rather have it than not. So at least there is a little bit of hope. It's just you would have hoped for a better Buzelis season so far. You would have hoped for, although Giddey's been fine. It's the constant, if he needs the ball all the time, is he good enough to actually warrant that on a team that's actually good? Or are we just kind of wasting our time here with a guy that can't space off the ball but needs the ball to be effective? And you would just hope for more progression from that. And like you said, the cherry on top is the 12th pick in the draft might as well not have been on the team.
Yeah. So we'll see kind of what direction they end up heading in. Like even we saw Washington last year, like they acquired Marcus Smart and got a first round pick out of it from Memphis. Like stuff like that I would like for Chicago to do. Your March thing with Josh Jackson reminded me kind of recently of just Jalen Green. Like Jalen Green, I feel like was killing it in the month of March over the last 3 years in Houston, but would struggle mostly at the start of every year. You got to take March with a grain of salt because you're watching so many two-way guys, G League guys, tanking teams, injuries. Like you'll see, who was it last year? Like AJ Lawson for the Raptors had like a 35-point game in March.
AJ Johnson was crushing it for the Wizards.
Yeah, you'll see just like random guys that I don't know if they'll be on like an active roster the following year. So
yeah, but the Spencer kids didn't get the memo. They're doing that in December. They're just 3 months ahead of schedule.
No, yeah, you gotta respect the Spencer brothers. Cam is nice. What was I gonna say? Okay, so yeah, we'll move on to the last team. We've talked about them a little bit. The LA Clippers, a team that's kind of officially hit rock bottom in a way. Like we talked about them earlier, where it's just like you don't have that pick anymore. I would trade everybody. I would literally say nobody is untouchable on this roster. We'd move Zubats. We'd move Derrick Jones Jr. We'd move Kawhi and Harden. We'd literally take anything. We would just like picks, expiring contracts, or anything, honestly, that you're willing to give us because this team doesn't own much draft capital. So you need to add and replenish this young core, which basically since they traded for Paul George and got Kawhi in the 2019 offseason, I saw this tweet today. They drafted like Keon Johnson late in the first round. They used one on Marcus Morris. They used one on Eric Gordon. They drafted Kobe Brown and Yannick Niederhauser. They have not really hit on a first round pick since maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander back in 2018. So I would like to see this team accumulate some draft capital in a solid draft. And hey, you're in LA. You have what the Kings don't have, and maybe they like some of these smaller markets don't have. Like people want to play in Los Angeles. You have a rich owner, a new stadium, plenty of touches to go around if you moved on from some of these guys. And maybe you make a play for Trae Young, or maybe you're a Kuminga, Quentin Grimes. You just like hit on the margins this offseason, and then there's some big fish in 27. I would just like to see this team move in a completely different direction. Harden and Kawhi aren't even playing bad, but this team can't win because the bench isn't good. The rest of the team looks old. And yeah, they're just, even if they somehow sneaked in as the 8 seed, they're getting smoked in round 1.
Yeah, thank goodness Harden's playing well because that gives you a little bit of hope for his overall trade value. And well is underselling it. He's playing like just in terms of per game stuff. Maybe he doesn't ever box out anyone. He gets dunked on, but per game stuff, he's looking good. It's funny that you mentioned like all the first round picks and stuff that they have not hit on. There aren't a lot of great development stories, and ironically, the one that's good is Zubats, who they got from the Lakers. Do you remember off the top of your head what the trade was when they got Zubats from the Lakers?
Yeah,
is one guy who they traded for.
Mike Muscala, right?
Yeah, unbelievable. The Lakers
Magic Johnson, baby.
We need front court spacing, and they trade for Mike Muscala.
Crazy.
And then Zubats, like I don't think people understand. Like I'm not lying. Zubats almost made third team All NBA last year. Like, he was very good.
Very good.
And so I think if we're ranking trade assets, if you can find a team that needs a big, I definitely think they would probably, ironically, be able to get the most out of him because he's not particularly injury prone. He's not particularly old. The Kawhi thing, it's just so much money to commit to a guy that's not playing. It would have to be like a super desperate team. I think that's unlikely. The Harden thing is interesting if you can find a combination of a team that has the salaries to trade for him and is desperate enough. Prior to all the Giannis stuff, I threw around the Bucks a little bit where you're just trying to get another creator alongside Giannis. I think it would have had to be like Kuzma and Portis, like just contracts that like the Clippers don't particularly want, but then if you can get a pick or some swaps or something, some future, maybe Giannis isn't there anymore, swaps from the Bucks, that would interest the Clippers. But like you said, at this point, they're in a very strange situation because normally you would think, oh, they don't have their pick, so they want to win all the time. But they're so bad and so far away from being anything that you have to convince yourself that it's just a sunk cost. There's nothing you can do this year that's going to allow you to get that pick back. The Thunder could get the first overall pick in the draft, and you're just going to have to accept that. It's the Baron Davis, Kyrie swap all over again. And so you have to just separate that and think, okay, what's the best move for the team? And the future of the team is not better if you keep Kawhi and James Harden to win 32 games. It's just not. So you have to make that choice. It's just trying to find teams that are actually interested that either need a guard or an injury-prone wing. Like it would be super funny if they try to trade Kawhi to like the Raptors or something. Like your Knicks are not interested. The Pistons are chilling unless there's like a weird Tobias Harris Kawhi thing. Orlando's needed a guard forever, but they got Desmond Bane. I don't think James Harden particularly fits what the Magic's whole vibe is about. Philly doesn't need any guards. The Cavs don't need any guards. The Hawks don't need any guards. You look at, I mean, I guess Minnesota could maybe be a Harden team. because they've been trying to solve their quote-unquote point guard thing for a while. Maybe they're an interesting mix of contracts and desperation, but it's an interesting combination of it's clear they should trade these guys, but apart from Zoo, I'm not sure how realistic it is that they actually will.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wonder what team. Yeah, I'm trying to think who has a stronger trade market between Harden and Kawhi. It might be Harden, honestly.
It's definitely Harden.
He's making less, more reliable. He's got a player option at the end of the year. Does Toronto get in there? But like you're doing RJ Barrett, something like that, Jakob Pert,
are Kyrie and Harden on speaking terms these days? How are they doing? Because Dallas could use James Harden.
They could
speak, because I know James Harden was mad at KD or the reverse in the whatever the Netflix thing was. So I don't know kind of what's happening with that core of people. I know there's lots of feelings about Kyrie either way. So maybe they're not super great friends. I'm not sure, but the Dallas definitely could be the team. The Blazers could suit up James Harden tonight. They need a guard so desperately.
I know,
but he'll probably immediately get hurt because they're just playing all their guards so much. That's what happened with Drew Holiday. But
I don't even know. Like if the Pelicans were a little bit better, I could see that maybe like we don't own our first round pick. Let's try to do something here. But like it's a sunk cost for them at this point as well.
James Harden in a Blazers jersey would just be the weirdest thing ever. That doesn't even make sense in my head. Him in Portland. It's just bizarre.
Phoenix, no, I just don't. They don't have the matching salary. I think in a way to really. They do, but they're not moving. I don't know.
They're fine.
Yeah,
they're kind of like the Rockets and the Magic to me, where they're like, we want to guard people, and that's not what James Harden does. No. We don't need him to score 27 and then stand in place on defense. We're good.
Totally. Yeah, like it's really tough to figure out. The Kawhi, I don't even know with Kawhi as well. Like Miami, Golden State gets desperate. Miami, Milwaukee's not getting there financially. It's tough, man. I really do wonder what the Clippers are going to do. I hope they don't trade like Bogdan Bogdanovic and like Yannick. Like they kind of do what the Bucks did last year with Chris Middleton, and it's something like that where you're trading your most recent first round pick, a future swap for like a Kyle Kuzma-esque player in hopes to salvage the year. I mean, they're only 4 games back of the 10th seed. Like they're not done completely. Like the West is not really great. 9 on, 8 on even right now. Like they are 7 games back of the 8th seed, but we'll see what.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Is if we had this conversation a week or two ago, and they were, like you said, a game or 2 out of 10th, not that big of a deal. Because Memphis, you never know what's going to happen with them. Utah's hanging on to the 10 seed for dear life. No one wants the 10 seed right now in the West. And if this was the pre-play-in tournament era, then they're 7 games back. They definitely are not making it. But if it was a week or 2 ago, they're a little closer. But one way to frame it is, yes, they're 4 games out of the 10th seed. They also have won 1 more game than the Pelicans, who have been everyone's biggest disaster the entire year. I cannot believe how bad they are. For a team that, yes, the roster's different. Norm Powell's not there. John Collins is there. Guys are hurt. Guys are always hurt. And then they tried to bring in Bradley Beal. That didn't work. There were numbers from the last 20 games of the year last year that made the Clippers look like the 3rd best team in the league.
Yeah.
And now here we are, however many months later, and they're 6-20. Should Norm Powell be getting MVP votes? This is absurd. How are they this bad? And I didn't like the move. I made videos talking about how I thought that I could understand getting rid of Norm Powell because you don't want to have to give him the extension because you're trying to save cap space, and that's just going to be an issue for him. He's going to be pouting the entire year. Whereas John Collins, you just bring him in. He's a new guy. He's going to be a free agent regardless. Gives you some front court versatility. You bring in Brook Lopez, and then you bring in Bradley Beal. Gives you like 80% of what Norm Powell did last year, and everything's fine. The problem is Bradley Beal didn't do anything for you, and now Norm Powell's doing even better than what he did with the Clippers. He's doing that for the Heat this year, and I guess the answer really is that simple, that there's injuries like there always are. They don't care on defense anymore. And Norm Powell was so impactful for them, especially when Kawhi doesn't play. Because that was one of the things with Clippers fans where when Kawhi and Norm Powell played together, it didn't work. Like Norm Powell wasn't as good, but then in the games that Kawhi didn't play, that was when Norm Powell was really good in the beginning of the year last year. But yeah, I think one day, hopefully I get an MVP ballot and then I'll vote for Norm Powell. That's where we're at.
It's just like everything went right for them last year, and everything, I feel like it was their best possible outcome. And this year it's just like everything's not going their way. It's just the Bradley Beal, the Chris Paul, like you said, the Norman Powell was really the beginning of it. And yeah, I just don't know how this team gets better. I don't think they have like a random Ryan Rollins on their team. I can appreciate the Kobe Sanders 2nd round pick. I can appreciate Jordan Miller, like moment here and there. He's like shot the ball well this season. Derrick Jones Jr. Was it a knee injury or it is a knee injury. He was out 6 weeks in the middle of November, so he's out till the new year. Like His team's not getting better. I don't think coaching changes anything as well. I think they would have fired Ty Lue already if they thought so. So yeah, we'll see what direction this team goes in. I think for their fans' sake, I hope they don't be aggressive to just try to get an 8 seed this year. I don't think that's worth trading into your 2030 draft capital. Like, who knows if aspiration comes down too and this team loses another first. I don't even know what's going to happen with all that.
I forgot about that too.
Yeah,
it's just crazy. One, I forgot about that too. It's crazy that like 6 months ago, they were going into a Game 7 against Denver, a Denver team that took the eventual champs to a Game 7 as well. This Clippers team did, and now here we are 6 months later, and they're 6-20. And yeah, like Kawhi hasn't played all the games, but that was a given. Most of their roster, I know Beal got hurt, Lopez has been bad, but like it's not so dramatically different that you can go from being somewhat on the level of a Denver team and an Oklahoma City team, and now here we are 6 months later. And I guess, yeah, the combination of Norm Powell and whatever this scandal is has just completely destroyed the franchise, which is hilarious, by the way, because like right now, the sign of life for the Clippers is that cap space that you mentioned, and they're going to eventually get control of their first round picks back. I believe in 2027. I'm not 100% sure. I think they owe the Thunder one more next year, but it's a swap.
Yeah.
So the light at the end of the tunnel is 2027, cap space, picks. Okay, well, what if the league takes away your 2027 first-round pick and it just goes out the window because you planted too many trees or whatever the hell happened? So now all of a sudden that's gone. And it's actually hilarious to me that we have two gigantic scandals hanging over the league that could impact draft selection for, one, the Clippers, two, the Heat are over there like, hey, guys, could we maybe get our first-round pick back? Because the Hornets knew what Terry Rozier was doing when they traded him, and we would super like to have that pick. Like, we're actually pretty good. Maybe we could trade for Giannis. Do we get that pick? Oh, by the way, Terry Rozier makes $22 million, and you won't tell us if we can trade him or not. That would be cool. We have these two things hanging over two teams that are already connected, regardless of scandal, because of the Norm Powell thing. And they just, the concept that neither of these teams know what's happening with very, very impactful first-round picks is absolutely absurd. But it's why the NBA is great for content, so it's fine.
Yeah, no. Okay, so out of all the 5 teams we talked about, Cavs, Warriors, Kings, Bulls, Clippers, and there was a move at this deadline that made everybody go, holy shit, they did what? Which one of those 5 teams is making it?
It's either the Cavs or the Warriors. It's either the Cavs trading Garland or Mobley for something. Because like if they trade Jared Allen, everybody's be like, cool,
Makes
dude,
sense.
you traded Jared Allen. We've been waiting for that for 3 years. And the Warriors would be like either trading Draymond for somebody or trading Draymond and Kuminga and some stuff for Giannis. In terms of likelihood, I'd say probably Cleveland. I think they are the closest to desperate that also can realistically, like, has stuff that someone wants and can change their team in a real way. If in a theoretical universe, the Cavs traded Darius Garland for some wing that helps their rotation and makes their team work better, and then it's Jared Allen who isn't as useful anymore, are you more or less scared for the Knicks of the Cavs with Darius Garland on the team or not? Like, if let's just say it's equal level of talent trade, but it smooths out their roster in a way that it's just Mitchell and then there's a wing or someone that can shoot, and it just clarifies their team. Yeah. Are you more scared of that, or are you more scared of Darius Garland on the team?
I think I'm more scared if they make a trade. I mean,
I
think
that's the right answer.
I'm trying to remember. I think he was banged up when the Knicks played them in 2023. And I know the Cavs are better then, but I think the Knicks are better than that team as well. I don't know. Like, the Cavs, I guess they just haven't had that statement playoff, like, series win yet. Like, they beat Miami and they beat a very young Orlando team in 2024. So,
they're also, I just think that those two teams, I think the Cavs are just, it's not a good matchup for them because, like, with Garland on the team, it's just not a good matchup for them because he can't guard Brunson. So then he's got to, with the current lineup, he's going to have to either guard Josh Hart or maybe Mitchell Robinson.
It's tough to hide him.
Like, there's nowhere to hide because Josh Hart's going to kill you on the glass. Mitchell Robinson's going to kill you on the glass. One of those guys is starting, we presume. And if it's not one of those guys, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges aren't great post-up players, but it's Darius Garland. Like, you're going to get destroyed. There's nowhere to put him unless you want to play a bunch of zone against, in theory, one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league. So I think that's just a particularly difficult matchup for them as currently constructed, which is tough because in a theoretical universe in which they're really good at the end of the year, I would argue, no disrespect to Detroit, the Knicks are the number one team that they would have to deal with in the postseason. So that would be, I guess, another way to look at it is if you look at your matchup and just realize that Darius Garland is just not going to be a good fit.
Totally. So we'll see what ends up happening. I think I agree. Like, Cavs do make some type of shakeup. Maybe the Warriors at the mean desperate, or I guess the Clippers as well. The Bulls, I think they're the least likely because they're just not going to do anything. Kind of what they've done in years past.
So who's more likely? Just kidding. I was gonna say like who's more likely of like Kuminga and someone else to get traded, but Kuminga's like minus 20,000 to get traded at the trade deadline. There's no way he's on the roster. There's 0%.
No, like even if nobody calls for him, they'll like do him for like DeMar DeRozan at the last second or something. They just got to get anything for him that can like.
They need him. Like it's gotten to the point with how bad the contract stuff was in the offseason. He just needs to not be in the building. Like that's where we're at right now, and they could literally get a pick, anything. He just needs to not be there anymore.
Totally. So, yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. This was definitely fun to do. We might do like some type of all-star draft prediction thing in our next episode later this week. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap this up?
No, I'm chill.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys all for watching on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you can leave a like on YouTube and leave a rating and review on audio, it helps the podcast grow. We'd appreciate that a ton. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.